Earlier this week, South Africa was downgraded in terms of their ability to repay loans which they get from the international community, namely the Western countries. That is mainly the IMF and the World Bank and other international sources of obtaining money, because that's what African countries are looking for. They are looking for money, and they do get the money, but the people who give them the money want their money back. Okay? And my argument has always been, why do you need money from the West? Why can't you make your own money? Why can't you create your own capital? But anyway, what I want to talk about today is what's happening in South Africa today, which today is Friday, and a second agency has downgraded South Africa credit rating to junk. Now, what this means is that this is the second agent that has done this within 7 days, within a week, within a few days of each other. I think 2 or 3 days apart. So what has happened is that this actual agency is called Fitch, but before that, Standards and Poor's had done the same. It had downgraded South Africa to junk status. Junk status means that it is no longer considered a country which investors should take seriously, so it is now outside the investment zone, which means if South Africa, for example, decides to sell some bonds, okay, the international community might not be willing to buy those bonds, because if they did, South Africa would get foreign currency, because external investors would buy the bonds in foreign currency. So South Africa would get foreign currency. But because of this downgrade, South Africa will not be able to get access, or, well, their bonds will no longer be attractive to these external agencies or investors. Right. So now you've got two agencies. Okay, so when Standard & Poor's decided to downgrade South Africa, and this is something which had been talked about. So it's not something that just happened suddenly, but there had been talk of maybe this might happen. The way that the economy is going, maybe South Africa might be downgraded. South Africa is not the first country to be downgraded, and it takes a minimum of 7 years, okay, for a country which has been downgraded to junk status to come back up, or to come out of junk status, okay, which means after it has come out of junk status, investors from outside the country are able to start investing or buying the bonds that the government is floating. Now, so what's happened is, after the first ratings agency, Standard & Poor's, had downgraded South Africa, it was expected that the other agencies, and the other agencies, one of them is Fitch, okay? It was expected that, and the other one is Moody's. So Moody's and Fitch, two different agencies. So it was expected that, and Friday today was the day one of them, and that's Fitch, was expected to announce their decision as to whether they would downgrade or they would not downgrade South Africa. They have decided to downgrade South Africa. which means South Africa now has two ratings agencies, and we know that different investors use different agencies. So those people or those investors who are using Fitch would now join the investors who are using Standards and Poor's, and we're not going to talk about who owns Standards and Poor's and for what reason. Okay, but they are ratings agencies. They look at the health of a country, of the economy of a country, and they make a decision as to whether investors should go into that country and invest in that country. Okay, so Standard & Poor's has decided that South Africa is in a junk status, and now Fitch has also decided that South Africa is in a junk status in terms of their ability to repay their obligations, to repay their international obligations. Okay? So if you look today, for example, Friday, okay? If you look at just Google South Africa and what you get in the top stories, what you get is anti-Zuma protests take place across South Africa. Hashtag South Africa Unites live. As it happened, South Africans thanked for peaceful marches. So thank the heavens for that. There's been peaceful protests. We don't normally see peaceful protests in South Africa, but that's a positive. Thousands march in South Africa to demand Zuma resign. Well, in a different democracy, in a different country, Jacob Zuma would have resigned, okay, by now. But we know that he's going to try to cling on. I saw a clip where Jacob Zuma was sounding a little bit desperate. Okay, he was talking about, or he was trying, I think he's trying to pass the blame. I don't blame him for trying to pass the blame, but he was trying to, but I don't think that this is the right time for him to do that. Okay? If he had been explaining these issues to his people all this time, then it doesn't look desperate now. But it does look desperate because he is trying to pass the blame to the Western system of neocolonialism, blah, blah, blah. I do not dispute that there is the West has a hand in what is happening in South Africa today. Okay, and a lot of people are thinking because of the respect, okay, some people think it's respect that they had for Nelson Mandela, that they are just waiting for Nelson Mandela to pass on because he was advanced in age, waiting for him to pass on, and then these troubles are beginning to take place today. But that's conspiracy, and I'm not going to discuss conspiracy theories. But anyway, so Jacob Zuma is expected to resign, should have resigned by now, but obviously he's not going to resign. Okay, but we're happy that the protests have been peaceful. I'll just read some of the placards here. Change, hashtag change 19. I think that's 2019, probably. Fire Zuma. A nation divided. I can't read the rest of it. Okay, there's a video there. I think if you go on the website, you can be able to watch. So protesters in Pretoria demanded that President Zuma step down. Okay, but I don't think he should have waited for people to demand. He should have just left because it's time to go. But maybe that was the intention, and this is the problem with liberation war parties is they think that when the West makes a decision, like obviously these agencies are affiliated with the West, when they make a decision which puts an African leader in a position where they have to resign, what happens is the African leaders often see that as an attempt to get rid of them, and memories of the war come back into play, and there's always that suspicion that they want to put somebody else who is more subservient or favorable or will do what the West is asking for or what the West wants. Okay? If you've read a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, this looks exactly like what is being discussed in that book. Okay, it looks exactly like that because in that book they talk about uh, the situation where Western countries, especially the Americans, okay, they will come up with a way to economically squeeze a country because they want something out of it. Okay. For example, South Africa, they might want something out of it, and if Zuma is not proving to provide those assurances, then they'll try to get rid of him. And the easiest way to do that is to mess up the economy, because when you mess up the economy, like now, it looks like the economy is going to be in deep water, and when that happens, you know how the people are going to react. So they try to create a situation, or they create a situation where um, what's going to happen is that the people will revolt against the leadership, and the leadership goes. But if that fails, then there's a plan B, which might involve something called the jackals. So what do they do? What are the jackals? The jackals would come in if the economic hitmen fail. The jackals come in and they try to assassinate the president. If that fails, then the army is sent in to. I think when the army comes in, there is no other way that the president or the leader of that country might stay on in power. And we can look at Libya, we can look at Iraq as examples where the army has had to come in and get rid of the leader after the jackals have failed and the economic hitmen have failed. Okay. There's a lot to talk about in Africa. So South Africa unites as it happened. South Africans thank for peaceful marches. So like I said, I'm thankful that the marches were not violent. Nobody got hurt. They were peaceful. So that's a positive outcome of this unfolding events. These unfolding events. Tens of thousands, according to The Guardian, tens of thousands march against Jacob Zuma in South Africa. I think I've already talked about this. So basically, two agencies have now downgraded South Africa to junk status, which means that to the normal South African, what's going to happen now is life will become a little bit more difficult, because it means that South Africa is going to find it more expensive to get international assistance in terms of loans. And so all they will do is pass on the increased rate of interest to the citizens. And the most, what people normally use loans for at an individual level is housing and motor vehicles, cars, and maybe clothing. So those things are likely to go up. So if those things go up, then there's less for food. And obviously food would also go up. And imports would also go up, because the currency would take a battering. And when it does take a battering, it means that the rand will be less valuable. So you will need more rands to buy foreign currency. So if you need more rands, it means it's becoming more expensive to import product from outside the country. And it's not necessarily luxury products. It could be spare parts for machinery and stuff like that. Anything which is not manufactured in South Africa. Okay. So lives for the ordinary people would become worse. And to respond to that, normal people would protest like they are doing now. But this is just the first. So imagine they've called for Jacob Zuma to step down. I suspect he's not going to step down, which means we can expect more protests. And I do hope that the more protests would be as peaceful as this one has been. Okay? So I think there are lessons to be learned for South Africa from the Zimbabwe experience, that when these things happen, I think it's a mistake not to unite the country, not to consult all the clever people in the country, all the intelligent people, all the academics. Call for unity of purpose. There's a way out, but the only way out is to create your own capital, but is to understand capital in the first place. Understand capital, then create your own capital and use those smart creatives. Okay, the smart people, some of them who may have left the country, but without asking them to come back, I think you can still communicate with them and you can still get their assistance. You can get people coming in for 6 months to help, pay them well, they'll come in and assist and then go back to their new homes. Okay, so I've done a blog post on the soon after the first ratings agency, Standards and Poor's, downgraded South Africa, and I'm doing this video or this screencast after the second, which was expected day, and that's Fitch has also downgraded the country. Okay, so I think by next week, the third one, we're still waiting for the third ratings agency and then for the reaction from South Africa. So thank you for watching this. My website is www.derektfuma.com. I think I'll put it on the screen here so you can see it. And I'm not sure if Google will be happy with that, but we learn every day. So thank you for watching.